Welcome back to the channel. My name is Brad, and today we're going to look at AIPI, FEPI. We're going to look at the calls of NEOS, Kurv, GIAX. If that is what you're looking for, stick around. So first of all, my name is Brad, and I've been retired now, going on 8 months, and that is awesome for me. But we just had a little dip in the market. So how did this turn out for everybody? And where are we now with all the calls for all the different funds? So let's look at NEOS. We look at NEOS first. We see that, hey, NEOS was up today, and it was significantly up today. And that is because they still have not rolled their calls. So they're very far out of the money. You can see that SPY is still 4% out of the money. QQQI is 5% of the money. IWMI is 4.3 out of the money. BTCI is 5% out of the money. And IYRI is 3.4% out of the money before the first strike. And that's a long ways to go. And we still have another week before NEOS rolls those calls. But how does this actually look like on a chart? So if we look at the first chart, we see that SPY is significantly higher, and it's up in green. GIAX does a call spread, and you can see that it went through the call spread today, and we're significantly above the call spread, and they will do new spreads tomorrow. About 1% thereabouts out of the money, and then we have to go through those spreads to continue the rise up. But we'll get to that a little bit later. If I look at QQQI, again, significantly higher, long ways to go. We still have a week before we roll those calls. So any gains that we see in QQQ, we are also going to see it in QQQI. GIAX went right through the call spread today and rose above it, but there's that little gap, and we see that in the data. If I look at IWMI, well, we went through the GIAX spread and we gained on that, but IWMI is significantly still farther out, and IWMI is still farther out of the money. So we have long ways to go for IWMI. So let's talk about Brad's account. I mean, that's what it all counts about. What am I at and where am I at? So if I look at SPY, I see SPY. My yellow line is my cost basis. So I'm almost back up to my cost basis on SPY. If I look at QQQI, I'm also right up against my cost basis, almost through my cost basis. And that is a significant difference because I was down earlier, but right now I'm right back up to where my cost basis is, or right about where my cost basis is. IWMI, I'm significantly down from my cost basis, but hey, I'll buy more shares when they do the distribution, and everything will be good because this is a long-term play and not a short-term play. Where's my money today? I just want those distributions over time. If I look at IRYI, you can see we're still well below the 2 strikes, and we have another week, and we'll collect that 11.5% and be happy about it because 8% is what I'm living on. That extra 3% gets reinvested back in, lowering my cost basis, and all is good. BTCI, well, BTC was up today. That was huge. But BTCI still well below the strikes. Lots to go, and they will roll these calls come Monday next week. Way to go for NEOS. We're going to see all the gains all week long, if there's gains to be had. But we'll see how that plays out for us. GIAX. Well, GIAX was up 0.64% today. But you can see where through those call spreads, and that's great when it's green out of the money all the way through where they say bought calls, because that allows us to go through those calls, and that's just fine for them to do that. But we actually lose the gap in between, and that's where the problem lies. We lose that gap between the 5670 strike and the 5700 strike. We lose that little bit of gap in between there every time it goes through. So it's going to take longer for them to get up to my cost basis. But then again, they're also paying twice SPY. So you got to take higher payments, a little more risk, lower payments, lower risk. It's all part of that same exact play. Now, moving on, let's talk about Feppy. Feppy, if you don't know, got all their strikes redone and they rebalanced the fund on Friday. So we look at their strikes, we can already see it went up 1.7% today. But they went through a couple of the strikes on Tesla. They also went through the strike on PLTR and AMD. But you can also see that we still have room on Apple, Adobe, Amazon, Google, Intel, Meta. So you can still see we have plenty of room for the price of Feppy to continue to rise. And what we notice, since we've been tracking this every single week on Brad's website, is they roll these calls every week. And those new calls, every Monday, there are new calls for FEPI, AIPI, and CEPI. Unfortunately, CEPI, their calls weren't available today. And I will get to that as soon as CEPI puts out their calls, and we'll know where they are going forward. But let's talk about AIPI. AIPI, well, AI replaces CDNS. So they reconstituted this fund. AI is in, CDNS is out. And I noticed that today because they do that on a quarterly basis and they rebalance every month. If I look at their strikes, I see that we got a couple that are through. I see that they actually did laddered strikes on a couple of them and went up 2% today. And we will see how this plays out for the next month. But you can see they have plenty of room to move up over time. We'll see how that plays out for us. Who knows? Getting on to Kurv. If I look at the curve, we're out of the money on everything. The only thing that we're even getting close to on the money is Goop. But that's okay. That's only 5% out of the money. And we have a long ways to go. So let's take a look at these on a chart so you can see where these are on a chart. AMZP, you see that we're below the synthetic and have lots of room to grow if Amazon grows up in price. And they will roll these calls on Monday. So we have lots of time between now and Monday before they roll those calls. If I look at AAPY, same thing. The price can go up and you will capture everything with Kurv because you're well below their strike and their strike is another week out. Goop, that's the one that the closest one because the green line is actually the call. The synthetic is slightly higher, but it can go up price 5%. So you'll gain that 5% in your NAV this week if Google goes up with Goop. We will see how that one plays out. So MSFY, again, lots of room between the green line, which is your strike that you don't want it to go past, and the actual price. So you will see your NAV go up if Microsoft goes up. Netflix, you're right in the middle. Netflix is interesting because Netflix and their calls seem to be really good and high premiums with Netflix. But that is just an interesting play with Kurv because it appears they have plenty of room for it to go up. And last and not least is TSLP, which is on Tesla. It's the Kurv fund, TSLP. And you can see where their calls are. Their actual synthetic is above their current call. But any gains, you're going to see it in TSLP for Tesla. So if it goes up 10%, you're going to capture it. That is the calls. That's the calls as they stand right now. And you can see where everything is at. It's interesting that they've rolled those calls for FEPI and AIPI and changed things for them. And they actually reconstituted, put AI in there. So we'll see how that plays out. But you can see over time, the fund can go back up in price, but it's going to take a while to get there. It's not going to happen overnight. Enjoy the large distributions, reinvest a little bit, get back down your cost basis, and live off your 8%. So until next time, God bless.